Hey, Karen, you out there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Hey, awesome. So today we're going to kind of take a look at the periodic posting, um, what all it entails in Epicor, and we're also going to talk about going paperless in the office. And I know the going paperless, the questions that came in November were all focused towards accounting, which was kind of interesting because people were looking about how do I do AP workflows? How do I have the invoices scanned and then process them? And how do I go paperless? Um, Going paperless, I turn around and step back on this to take a look at more than just the Epicor DocStar solution. There are other alternatives that I've seen used in the workplace as well. So I kind of threw that into the presentation here for today. Karen and I will be going over the GL transaction types and the posting rules. We have a CodaBears periodic posting process modification that turns around and modifies the cost WIP capture process so that it doesn't say, what is it, generated by generic posting process or something like that, but putting a more complex description in so that you know where the source of that transaction came from and where the money's originated. And then we'll hit the going paperless at the office. We were going to hit job costing, but that applied more towards the production for Bruce's and my session at 1:30 today. We put that in with production and jobs, going over how the costs get on jobs, how they get tracked, not really from an accounting since we did this, I want to say, at the August meeting last year. So kind of starting this out is modifying the GL transaction types. This is not the scary Pennywise clown evil it used to be. Back in version 9, it was a little difficult to do changes to the posting process. As you get to 10.2, you're going to find this goes a whole lot smoother and a whole lot easier. And including when you upgrade, Epicor doesn't step on your feet and throw your transaction types and your posting rules out the window. You get to keep them, and so they become layers. So you have like the Epicor base GL transaction type. They'll be putting industry extension layers in, and then the user customized layer on top of it. So yours lays on top of theirs, and even theirs can lay on top of theirs. So this allows them to create verticalizations that are more industry focused for customers. There was a question regarding foreign key views in the November meeting, and they said that it was demoed at Insight in a session, but I could find no reference to this anywhere. And foreign key views are normally used in the customization with data tools linking to other tables. I haven't really seen that much in the posting rules or customizing them, but you do have the ability to access UD tables, user codes, and BAQs. So that is what I'm thinking might have been accessing a foreign view or a foreign data source from the posting rule, but not necessarily a foreign key view. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat window. I see Lori's already got them. Periodic posting is what it says in there, without any custom posting rules. So replacing those two words and having it mean something is what Karen will be going over with the posting rules. So Karen, you want to go ahead and take off here? I'll go ahead and let you.
Sure. The name of our customization for changing the text on a transaction type in Epicor is called posting rules, and that applies to the cost and WIP GL transaction type. That will change the standard GL journal description for cost of sales and work in process transaction types. Usually you would see where as these transaction types impart transaction history. the description will be changed from the nondescript periodic posting to a more meaningful description, as you will see in the demo here.
Awesome.
So can it get any more exciting? No more digging for the origin of these cost of sales and work in process and labor transactions. I'll show you the GL transaction type that will be modified, a view of the before and after descriptions, and what you need to tell us in order to customize your text descriptions, and an overview of the additional work to be done by CodaBears.
Awesome. So go ahead here.
So this is a picture of the description for the cost and WIP GL transaction type. In the middle here, you can see the description that it shows that it affects the inventory and WIP transaction types. There's many other GL transaction types which can also be modified, but the process that we call periodic posting only relates to this specific cost and WIP transaction GL transaction type. On the revision tab, you can toggle on and off the option to manually review all transactions as we're working on any changes to the GL transaction types.
Oh, come on, Karen, that's no fun here on the revision, so that you can actually see what's going on before it hits your GL.
Yes.
You can also put comments in regarding your revision that's going on this layer. So I can have another description here that kind of is more detailed what I changed or what I modified from the base Epicor revision, so that it's a little easier, because as you see later when we're looking at these codes and what all can be customized inside this program, if I had to turn around and go back 2 years later and figure out what was modified, it would be looking for a needle in a haystack. So put as much as you can description-wise into your revision so that you know what you have to go look for or what you modified. And they have a lovely little button here for check your syntax so that you can make sure that everything is correct before you turn around and try and mark it active.
And if you forget to check your syntax and try to make it active, it will do that anyways. But
it fails, but it's a little nicer if you get the error when you're looking for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So on the revision, the incoming document line, I went down to the entries, I went down to the posting codes and took a look at the detail. The incoming document that affects the cost WIP is going to be cost WIP capture, the cost of sales, labor records, part transactions, and I can also turn around and include BAQs and pull back additional information. I'm not limited to what's in the 4 sets that Epicor gives me. I can also add a BAQ if I want to go back and pull in a optional or a dynamic segment. So if I want to pull a dynamic segment as a capital expenditure or a project ID, I can turn around and add a BAQ into my incoming document line so that I can feed that data into the rule set when the transaction occurs and posts. And I think my screen is bouncing all over here. We backed up a couple. Inside the book, I then have my booking rules. I have functions that I can have calculated or run before the transaction, and I can have variables that the posting process is going to use. And these variables and rules is what we're generally customizing to make it do the things that we want. It's a hybrid of VB code, very simple, similar to Excel. It's not identical, but it's also more of a, what do you call that, Karen? Click and select, because a lot of it is drop-down based. but you have to click on the item to pick what you want it to be. I would say there's not a lot of typing in there where you have to type raw code or things like
Right.
that. It's mostly picking from the drop downs.
Mhm.
And really, it's drop down options. So it's not like you can turn around and go in there and say, hey, have this be this, and pick a drop down option that can't exist or doesn't work. So years ago, when you had to write your own code or write your own equations in earlier versions of 9, if you were going to customize the posting rules, that's not the same in 10 anymore. So that's why I'm saying this is not as scary as it used to be 15 years ago. I'll let you go ahead and do this one, Karen, because this is going to be kind of the where we pick up into the CodaBears periodic posting process customization. We've standardized this for clients because it was more than about 10 people. Originally, it was about 10 people back in version 9. I think we have over 100 customers now using this customization, and we just roll out the updates as patches come out from Epicor.
Okay, well, we talked about this particular slide already. This shows the description for the cost and WIP to say that it's going to affect your inventory transactions for the part tran, labor details, and AR invoice details. Well, that's for the cost of sales, I guess. Yep. So we already talked about that one. Move on to the next slide. Yeah. So on this slide, this is a partial picture shown here for the different posting rules included in the cost and WIP GL transaction type. There's many more. So you can see here on the left, all the different part tran transaction types that you'll see if you look in part tran transaction history. And you can have a different description for each different type unless they're combined. Like the top one, you can see it says ADJ to CST and ADJ quantity. So those two are combined, so you can only have one description that's the same for both, other than having the transaction type listed in it. That could be different, but the rest of the description would be different.
I know I haven't looked in the data dictionary, Karen. Are they over 100 transaction types yet? They're getting close to it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I haven't counted or looked in the data dictionary either. So, but each rule needs to have the journal description modified to replace the generic periodic posting with a more meaningful description. So we do go through each of those tran types individually and change what the description says. And after those changes are made, each transaction type should be tested when or if possible.
Okay, now if you don't have or your company doesn't process the type of transaction, for grins here, if you turn around and we never order subcontract, then you would not have to do a customization to the subcontract transaction type.
Mm-hmm. But you might want to consider including it in case you do in the future. So it doesn't hurt to have your description in there as what you would think you would want it if you use it in the future. So this picture shows the before results of your periodic post, or you're running the capture, cost, and WIP process. And if you toggled on to manually review all the transactions, you'll see these types of descriptions shown in your review journal. If you're using the standard GL transaction type for cost and WIP, you'll see this with the standard, you'll see every description, no matter which type of transaction it is in the cost and WIP area, will show periodic posting process as the description.
Which is helpful for forensic accounting. This works great.
So after, here's the picture of after. So we have a template to ask you what you would like to see in each different transaction, and we suggest a starting point, and you can go ahead and change it to be more customized how you would like it, but you will see this after you run your cost and WIP process. If you toggled, and again, if you toggled on to manually review all your transactions, you'll see this in the review journal instead of each different type saying periodic posting. So here you can see the transaction type, and the first two are adjustments to purchases. So it shows the PO and the PO line and the supplier, and then all the rest are manufacturing variances, which just shows the transaction type and then the job number in this case.
Makes it a little easier to go track down where that transaction came from.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned that we had a template, and this is basically it. We'll send out a spreadsheet that has most, if not all, of the transaction types that are in the cost and WIP GL transaction type to maintain. You know, they change. There might be a couple more added with each different version of Epicor. So this list has most of them, and if there's more, we'll ask you via email what you might want if you change anything.
But for each one of these, you need to select what you want the default text to be.
Yeah. So you can see the examples in that column after the transaction type. The next column shows the examples, and then the yellow column we have marked to place your requested changes in this column.
And then a description of what the transaction is doing or what it's hitting, so that you know. You may not be familiar exactly what the code is, but we'll go ahead and put the translation of what that
code is.
Yeah, the part tran code, I'm like transaction type. But the data field probably isn't going to help you. And this goes through. So what we end up doing when Epicor rolls out a new version is we pull an extract of all of the transaction types, build that list together so that we make sure that we have a default for everything. If they add something new, we'll add a default into it, run this past the client, and then say, do you want this updated, or just use the standard, this updated text that most people are going to use.
Right. And if,
but again,
if you're, not comfortable filling it out by yourself, we could also have a quick meeting to work with you to fill this spreadsheet out. So as we mentioned, you can choose if you want to customize your descriptions. You can choose if you want to use the bar separator, which is shown in the default descriptions. The green arrow here is pointing to the separator, or maybe you want to use a /. And between each separator, you can have labels and placeholders. So in this case, sales SO is the label for sales order, and that's, the red. And then the placeholder is the order number, which is purple. Keep in mind that the review journal description is up to 45 characters long. So in the above example, the customer name may be truncated. For this reason, the longer data should be moved to the rightmost area of the description text.
Yep, or consider using something like the customer ID instead of the name. So that is a controlled amount of characters.
Right. So CodaBears has to do work in the background on the periodic posting of that cost and WIP transaction type. will create any needed posting codes. They're not really mail postal codes as shown in this picture, but instead additional data fields needed for the posting rules. Functions will be created that help to join the text as needed for the descriptions, and then each transaction type will then be customized to include a text description as you have determined by the column that you filled out on the previous spreadsheet.
Oops, sorry, I think I went too fast there, Karen.
So, on the customizations will be done in a test environment, and CodaBears will create a few transaction types for testing the customized descriptions for the transaction types. And then each client should also test more in depth. So that's why you have to do the E equals MC squared part of this. And more transaction types to make sure all text displays as requested. We're doing the simple transactions, a few that do, a little bit of multiplication, and you have to do the MC squared part.
Yeah,
And then,
it's easy to put that out there, but you got to make sure that there's no typos, the information's coming correctly before this goes to production.
Right. And then if you find that something needs to be changed or corrected, so, if we did miss space or, your label, we typed it wrong or whatever, or if you decided you want it displayed a different way than what you thought you did, then we look at modifications to be done to those customizations for each of the transaction types as you need them. And then once you're happy with all of the description text, the customization can be moved to production.
But again, you go through that sign-off process, make sure, yes, this is good to go before it goes on.
And it might be a few back and forth to test.
Okay.
So what's next? Well, we suggest you call our office to schedule the periodic posting installation or for help if you need it. If you call for the installation, we'll send you the spreadsheet to get your input, and it maybe take a few days or a week to decide if changes are needed, and then work can begin in the background with when the time block fits in a consultant calendar. We also had a few clients mention that later versions of Epicor changed the standard descriptions for some areas of accounts payable. If changes are needed in the description for other transaction types, either this AP one or any other GL transaction type, we can open a separate project for those required changes.
And even just doing like the cost of cash or just doing augmentation to get the revenue streams in there as well. This really is, it's not just modifying the cost web capture, the AP invoice, it's all of the financial posting rules in the system can be altered so that it contains more information or follows the rules that you're looking for in your unique environment. This really is the tip of the iceberg. Once people start looking at this and learn how the posting rules are modified, it really opens up doors for customers. Again, we've been doing this 18 years since version 9 through version 10, so it's been out for a while. It's gotten easier for us to maintain when Epicor went to layers. So this really simplified the process when they upgraded how the posting engine, the financial engine runs.
So
awesome,
we'll take a few minutes to answer any questions and enter them in the chat window if you have them.
Oh, they're already out there. They have already started.
Okay.
Lori Welch has one. Periodic posting is a comment. That's what it says in there. And Lori's also a user. She loves it, loves it, loves it. So I'm going to say she likes what you did there, Karen.
You're going to say what?
that she likes what you did with their posting rules.
Yep.
Justin Roman has GL transaction type continuously get overwritten with each refresh from Epicor. They're hosted, but yes, it sounds like you guys are going to solve that problem here. As you go through the 10.2, that's when the layers came out, so it doesn't completely destroy what you put out there for a transaction type. They update the base layer. Our customizations and their customizations still lay on top of that without being destroyed. And Justin also writes here, could I adjust these posting rules to bring in the department code from the requisitioner to hit a certain expense account when this is tied to a part class? Current problem is all expenses go to certain department or go to a certain expense with no flexing. That's exactly where this comes in, Justin, is using a BAQ. We can take that transaction, go back to the PO, look for the requisition, find out who that was, and adjust that segment. So while we do the descriptions, yes, you can also flex and change the rules on what values are coming in or for those variables when the process runs. Matthew Heck has a question here. The periodic posting process GL transactions does a roll up multiple transactions into one debit or credit amount. I believe you're doing a consolidation or you're doing the purge for the GL. So this rolls everything together and makes one transaction. You wouldn't see any of the details then. So all of the transactions would be, or the descriptions would be lost because all you're going to see is the summary entry, not the detail individuals. Is that what you were meaning there, Matt? If you can go ahead and let me know that. Okay, question here from Michael. Do you want to take this one, Karen? Oh, no, this is for the MRP session this afternoon, Stump the Chump. I'll take a look at this as we hit the end here, Michael, and I'll find out which session it belongs in, and we'll either cover it in the production or the Stump the Chump here. And Sharon Pulsifier here has a question. It sounds like it would add a different pay rule and customizations or anything more to be concerned with the upgrade.
She means really posting rule, not pay rule.
Oh, posting rule. Got it. This is not necessarily a different posting rule. It's a revision on top of the posting rule. So if you load the posting rules in again, we would turn around and pull this on top of it. Generally, when you're applying upgrades from Epicor, they're going to roll out updates to the financial engine as new transaction types come out or new part transactions come out, new part transaction types come out. This isn't every version. There were a lot of people that upgraded through the 10 versions, 10.0 and 10.1, where there wasn't a change. So we really didn't have to do anything. We kind of felt guilty charging maintenance for it. Can this be customized in the cloud version? 100%. This question came from Leanne Lux Munson. Can this be customized in the cloud version? Whether you're on-prem or on cloud, the posting engine, this is just applying the customization on top of the GL transaction type. And Sharon's got another question here. Will the prior month's changes with the new cost capture settings or just moving forward? You want to go for that one, Karen?
It is just moving forward if you've already captured the cost and posted to GL.
Exactly. I always feel guilty answering that. We can't go back and fix history. We can only take the transactions and moving forward. Dave Miller wants to know, will a group discount be offered to the EUG for this? Wow, really asking the hard question there, Dave. I guess, yes, we can do that.
I was going to say, I can't answer that one.
I'm like, come on, but yeah, I'm like, sure enough, we could definitely do that. How would I create a customization so these won't get overwritten every time? Justin Roteman's asking.
There's a separate tab in the GL transaction types for the customizations.
Awesome. And Brian, I'm not going to try your last name because Batchelder. I might turn around and bastardize this one. I hope I didn't. What if we do not post our cost whip capture? You do not need this. You would not see any of those transactions hitting your GL if you don't run the capture process. So modifying the transaction type for the cost whip capture, this isn't going to make any impact for you then. And Matthew Heck is out here. I was wondering if customizing the descriptions would need more transactions in general, as they wouldn't be able to be rolled up anymore into one generic posting process. There would be a bunch of individual transactions with individual descriptions. They're already individual out there. So I don't think your system is posting summary, it's posting the detail when you run a capture process. So, and these transactions, you would find them in the Tran GLC table. And Bruce Kyle has a question. I always end up with manufacturing variance transactions I cannot identify the source of. Will this help find a way to correct jobs or make them not post to variance account?
Well, it'll help you identify the jobs and or operation, etc. It might be possible, but it doesn't really tell you what's wrong with it to cause the variance. You'd have to do investigating on that part.
This is Bruce. I'll just throw out one thing that you can do with that is you can not modify anything in the posting rule, but actually your standard posting rules for product groups, you can have multiple manufacturing variances. So at least you can narrow it down. Is this caused by subcontract, material, labor, or burden?
Yeah, I'm thinking he doesn't want any of them. In that event, I would just modify the GL control code to go to the account that you want it to hit and don't have it go to variance. But if a transaction is hitting variance and you don't want it, I would almost say definitely segregate it out, but change the description so that you know exactly where it came from. This job, this transaction. And Michael Mullaney has a question here. If you have added a dashboard to a customization and after the fact wanted to add the retrieve button, is that possible or do you have to remove it and re-add it? Michael, I'm going to go ahead and forward this over to Dylan and Fred for their session on dashboards. I'm going to say this is probably not a financials question for you. Don's got a question here. When they update our cloud, I often have to re-import the posting rules. Would this customization be protected or would a re-import be needed? You want to go on there, Karen?
I'm not sure for the cloud, but I would expect you should be able to re-import it if it doesn't automatically come anyway.
So yes, you would turn around and re-import this over the posting rules when you load the base ones. Then next here from Ryan, again, we run the process, but customize that we do not post. Without the posting, it's not hitting the GL, so the description would never be built for the transaction to hit. So without doing the post, you're running the process, but you're not having the system do the transaction. You're just clearing the transactions out and marking them as captured. Yes, the process is purging WIPs and jobs and your inventory and moving labor as well. Hold on one second, I gotta scroll back down to the bottom here. And Laura Sarnicki, I thought there were a selection in the company config that allows for posting summarization or not. Yes, there is a configuration setting on the finance tab to post in detail or post summary. That may be what was applying with Matthew. The question over to Matt Heck here, I'm going to throw that back out to you. Are you guys in summary mode under company configuration? And that's why you're not seeing the details? That may be a configuration issue. And Scott Williamson is also mentioning here, it may be the costing method for the part. Is that the manufacturing variance question that was out there, Scott? Yes. Okay. Trying to make sure that I'm guessing that right. Standard cost would still have a manufacturing variance. Average, last shouldn't. I don't know as if FIFO or FIFO lot would have a manufacturing variance.
Well, you could get, Calvin, remember, you could get a manufacturing variance if you've closed the job, but
Exactly.
then and somebody wrote labor or material to that job.
Or did an adjustment and just closed it again.
Yeah, or
there was no receipt to inventory.
Yeah, or you did a receipt to inventory, and then somebody added labor to the job afterwards. Happens a lot of times. Now you're going to get a variance too.
And then Laura makes a comment here also, using the descriptions for the purchase transaction saves a lot of clicks and makes users very happy. Yes, if you can turn around and find out exactly where the transaction came from, it solves the problem of forensic accounting, is what I call it. Having to go back and find out where the transaction came from and what caused it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on so that we don't get too far in the weeds. We still have the paperless office and going paperless in the office. Any additional questions, go ahead and throw them into the chat and we'll go ahead and handle those after the meeting. We'll go ahead and reply back to people. So the second half of our presentation was going paperless in the office, and that's using document management systems. And as COVID has sent all of the employees away from the office, they need access to the paperwork that's still moving through the inboxes in the office. So a lot of people are pushing to go paperless. And I have to give Jose comments and kudos. I want to say, I don't remember if it was the May meeting or the August meeting where he took his company within 2 weeks and went with a document management system. They had literally 2 weeks. Since everybody scattered to the work from home, they didn't have access to paperwork. So how do you do this super quickly? And people are finding after they did this, productivity seriously increased. People had access to documents. Documents weren't lost anymore. Notes were being tracked on these documents, and collaboration was much easier. People were also building workflows and automation when the documents were received. If I receive an AP invoice and the price matches the PO, the quantity matches what was received, do I need to turn around and route the AP invoice through an approval, or can I just automatically approve it and schedule it for a payment? So the workflows and the automation when a document comes in also improved the productivity. And businesses were finding it lowered the costs. I don't have to pay for filing. I don't have to pay people to do this. So going paperless in the office, the cost of the system was now, okay, how is this hitting us? What's the software going to cost? What's the implementation of the software? Training the users, the integration with Epicor. I need to be able to have Epicor still have the links to the documents so people can get to them and see what's going on. How do users access those documents? Do they need to use a smart client application? Is it a web or a mobile-based access so people can get to from their phone, from their tablet, from their computer? And then how do I embed those links into Epicor 10 so that anybody can get back to it, but still follow a network protocol or some type of security that says, hey, you can't see the check that the owner took, but you can see the AP invoice because you're maybe the buyer. So making sure that people had the right access and right security to it. And then other things that I've been finding is user and the support community. Number one thing that I've heard with Dockstar is, oh, I want to talk to other people that have used it. I want to learn how they did this, and finding others that were happy with that. Or, hey, we bought this software, but we can't get any information because there's no user community for it. There's no support community. Does the software that you pick support messaging or chat or routing directly right in the software? Or is that an external where, okay, now I have to build a bolt-on, or we have to turn around and communicate an email, but the emails aren't stored in Epicor? Okay, then is the messaging stored with the document inside the document management system? And then the structured versus unstructured information. So I can have OCR where the document reads and scans the text and auto enters. Is it an add-in that shows up in Microsoft Outlook or in Microsoft Word? Does it work with scanners? Is email directly integrated so that if I do have an email dialogue regarding a document, can I see the email messages regarding that document when I look at the document? Or do I have to go to email and search it? So how does the related documentation or related information link back to that document and track with it? All of this is what hits this document management system. And just going paperless, can I share the documents via web or email? Or do I have to route the people back into the application to go see the document? If I have to route them back into the application, that's going to cost me more licensing to have people going in. Does the document support or the document management support version control? Do I have to check in and out the document so as people work on it or put their notes or their comments on it, they check it out, check it back in? Does it keep all of the previous revisions and previous versions of that document as the document's life moves forward? For medical or for aerospace, keeping track of that and having that original visibility of every change that was made to it, this is crucial in those industries. Are there dashboards to get to the information? Can I view the workflow, view the emails related to it, access the information on the document, or again, do I have to go to an external system? Is there a dashboard where I can easily see all this information so I don't have to do that 20 clicks to get somewhere? And does the document management also extract metadata from the files as they're being added? The size of the file, the date, who made it. And then the number one that I find people really love, does it support drag and drop, or do I have to sit and go click, find the file, then go search my network, then pull the file in? Or is it something I can just drag it, drop it on it, and be done with it? Making it simple for the users to utilize, adopt, and start taking advantage of. So some of the players in the field, it's March Madness coming here. DocStar, Epicor. Everybody kind of runs with this one. It's the simple one. They've been around for a while. Epicor bought them. APM and APM Plus was the Alltech product. That's still out there as well. Alchemy is another company or software that's out there for document management. eFile Cabinet. M-Files has been around more than 25 years. Esker and DocuWare are also. These are all purchase software. I threw down here as well, Logical Doc and OpenKM are open source document management systems. They're web-based models, but they're free software. If you have a web server, which Epicor happens to run on, you have the ability to run the open source document management system as well. So I wanted to make sure that people knew there are some players out there that are really regarded, and they're shareware. This is software you don't have to pay for. Comparing that to the purchase of APM or DocStar, that's going to make some companies really cringe when they have to pay that bill. So the cost of going paperless is the software selection, the storage of the data. Do I have room to put all of these documents in a database or on a file server? The cost of hard drives or servers is pretty cheap. So I'm going to say the data storage is not that much unless you're doing engineering prints and you've got a BOM that goes 5,000 components deep and each one has its own print. Installation and configuration of the software, the implementation, user acceptance, and training. Is this going to be an on-premise or a cloud-based? If you are under NIST control, military, contractor, or DFAR requirements, cloud-based may not be an option for you because the security is not there to lock the files down. Unless you're in a specified supplier of, hey, yes, we do this, that's not an awful lot out there. An Azure environment can be secure, but if you're on like Amazon Web Services, it's not secure. One-time setup and the maintenance fees of maintaining the software, and then if you do a cloud base, is there a monthly recurring? In that event that, okay, we didn't pay the bill this month, do we lose access to our data? That's crucial. If you lose all of your documentation, that's not something a company is generally willing to risk. And they're estimating already this is going to be over a $30 billion industry in the next 5 or 6 years. This is growing huge for companies, especially when COVID brought this up. But it is, when you look at how much is currently spent in shredding and archiving, this is just a drop in the bucket. Currently, everyone I know is using banker boxes. I've got filing cabinets. Hey, we've got this mezzanine out in the plant, so we just have them hoist all the bankers boxes up there. You're also paying someone to manage and handle all of that paperwork and the time it takes employees to file it. I can drag and drop a file on my screen a whole lot quicker than move something from an AP folder to the vendor folder and move that paper manually around the office. it's a whole lot easier and more economical to do it electronically. Some of the extras about going paperless here, document conversion. Do I go back and do the old documents, or do I only go moving forward and we just let the old stuff eventually fall off? The data storage for that, and both all states and IRS now accept PDFs of scans of documents. You don't have to have the physical document anymore. So that's not a requirement. So I'm going to say, yeah, let's definitely look at doing electronics. It's much easier to store. Do have to make sure that our backups are working and that we're backing up the document store as well. But while the question was originally, how do we go paperless in the accounting department? This applies throughout the whole organization. So a document management system is going to also be for the sales, scanning the purchase orders, scanning the changes to the orders, attaching those to the orders. It's not just attaching the AP invoice or the receiver, but also for sales, engineering blueprints, inventory, such as scanning the receiver. Do I scan a photo of the product when it left the dock and put an image into my document management system? When an RMA comes in the smashed box, do I take a photo of the smashed box and, hey, this is how it came back to us? This information can be stored just as much as a scan of a PDF. So images as well as text documents also apply here. Also hits the purchasing department. So I can turn around and scan the documents every time I send a PO out. Do I scan, hey, the new version, the buyer changed the PO. Give me a scan of the revised purchase order and attach it to the PO. Quality documents, material certs, MSDSs, all of this can be scanned and stored directly into Epicor rather than on file or file cabinets. So there was a whole lot more to this going paperless, and I kind of wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it. We had DocStar August, I want to say they were last presented at the user group meeting. And we're looking at having them come again, but I want to make sure that everybody knew there's more out there in the world. Epicor's base document management system just stores a link, whether the link is to a document management system or to Epicor. Depending on what you need, you can take a look at both the options out there. Hopefully that just shed a little bit of light on the going paperless. I know it was just focused more towards AP, but there were over 20 requests in November to cover this topic, all centered around AP, and there were only a couple of them for sales. So I wanted to kind of cover the whole topic for everyone.
So we have a couple questions. Graham Ross, is SharePoint not considered an option?
Yes, SharePoint is as well. SharePoint offers by the base, I want to say a 2 gig data store limit without the full purchase. Then you need to go, if you have more than that in your documents, Microsoft doesn't warranty the SharePoint. Then you need to have the paid version of SharePoint. If you're using an Office 365 with SharePoint, you can also do that, but then also consider how much data you're storing into the SharePoint, because I think 365 moves you up as you increase the amount of documents on the SharePoint repository.
Okay. And also from Graham, we have a requirement to retain documents for at least 20 years, which is most likely beyond the lifespan of Epicor or anyone's software product. A concern is how do we recover our documents and the indexing for them?
First, I take offense to that because I've been working with Epicor for 25 years. So,
and Microsoft Word's been around for over 30, so.
Exactly, I'm like.
You've got a couple that have made it past the 20 mark.
Yeah, Graham, I'm going to say Epicor is going to keep on going. It's a great software product. They made a great product there. I think this will go easily another 20 years. So going beyond that, I remember back when we did paperless in the late 90s, I scanned the hard drives and put them on CD. And then, we ran out of room on the CD. Let's put them on DVD. So that was our physical backup. Now the backup's into the cloud. So really, it's just how long do you want to keep the documents? I know the government's going to require 7 years. If you guys are going 20 years or even longer, I don't see this changing. They keep enhancing how media is stored and how much you can get on such a small thing.
I think one of the big concerns is however you back up your paperless system, what are you restoring it to? Because some of them, you're actually backing up the documents themselves. Sometimes you're backing up a database that has documents in them. Depending on how you can retrieve that, if it's separate, for example, if the documents are stored in a SQL server as blobs, you can always recover that SQL database and pull the documents out individually if you need to. So you can always get them that way, even if the other software is not around that has kind of the index match over to, you can go right into the job, look at the drawings. You might have to go to the database, find the job and the link over to the document, and then pull the document out of the database. But look at not just the software you're using, but what's the storage mechanism behind it. And if that company were to go away or change, how would you get that data out still would be a way to kind of handle that or mitigate that.
Yep, and I'm going to step in a puddle here, Graham. I went through an IRS audit. They wouldn't allow me to bring the PDFs on a thumb drive. I had to put it on a CD. The thumb drive was considered collateral and possible bribery. Made no sense to me, but ended up using the CD and the DVD to bring all the documents to the IRS. So it's just a case of how you want to store and archive and access the information.
Okay.
Justin Brotman went paperless with DocStar and have cut down from 3 people doing AP to 1. Also used to have 5 file cabinets of invoices. Now there's just none. Which, yes, I agree. The customer that I first went paperless with so many years ago, it was amazing how many bankers' boxes and the file cabinets became plant holders. So yes, the efficiency and the productivity improvements going paperless is amazing for a company. And Justin's offering to do a demo if we're looking for. So maybe I can get you to work with the DocStar people when we bring them back in to see what's new and what's changed in the software, but yet also have a customer spotlight focus. Justin? And Dawn Fisher is asking a question here. Have you ever worked with certifying? If so, can that be used as a paperless option? I am not familiar. Anybody, have you heard of the software Certify or the company?
And
I'll
since
give
we're
it a
running,
second here, Dawn. If anybody replies, please let me know in the chat. Go ahead, Fred.
I was going to say you're running up against your time limit here. So if you want to handle is there
I'll
any
hit
word
the
on
very
DocStar
last
going
one.
kinetic? Yep.
DocStar did go kinetic. The version that came out for 10.2.700 and the one for 11 is kinetic. They rewrote the UI interface for DocStar. And Sharon saying they use certify.com for T&E solution. I'm going to say Certify may be something similar to Concur. I would have to look into that for you guys, and I'll take a look. I'm like, it's always fun to bring, okay, Certify replace Concur for Sharon. We can definitely look into this, and I'll actually pull. I saw, wait, she was on here from Dorn or Carol. We can ask her because I think she's also with the Concur and document management over there at Dorner. So I'll check with her as well. I think they still use Concur. So we'll introduce them to Certify and see if it's any better for them.